Michael Jackson became the prototype for an entire generation of frontmen, and the Jackson 5 went global. Today, we're going deep into the musical ripple effect and one Betrayal by Berry Gordy that changed everything. What really happened on that UK tour? Have you ever heard of Finger 5? Me neither, but they were big. By 1972, the Jackson 5's fame reached Japan, 1,000 miles south of Tokyo, in Okinawa. 5 siblings, Katsuo, Mitsuo, Masao, Akira, and Takeo Tamamoto, were watching. The Jackson 5 weren't just musicians, they were a phenomenon. Matching outfits, synchronized dance moves, hits that didn't just chart, they detonated. Choreography, costumes, group structure, the high-pitched vocals of their lead singer. Mitsuo was cast as Michael. High energy, big smile, center stage. Finger 5 wasn't just Japan's answer to the Jackson 5. They were Japan's mirror image. They remade I Want You Back and did a version of Going Back to Indiana called Going Back to Okinawa. I'm going back to Okinawa. Matching suits, bubblegum soul, harmony, screaming teens, siblings. Sound familiar? Their tone, their presence was all J5 inspired. Finger 5 was the beginning of something new. Sony Music signed Finger 5 as a J-pop version of the Jackson 5. The country went wild. The Jackson 5 lit a match and the fire spread. The Jackson 5 blueprint became the template for J-pop idol culture. They gave the world a sound. They gave it a structure, and it's become a roadmap for teen idol success. That roadmap was in use everywhere, in real time. So what happens when the formula works? You copy it again and again. Imagine being so iconic that entire industries restructured their strategy just to imitate you. They ignited a pop explosion across 3 continents. This is one story you won't want to miss. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more of the Thriller Effect.
Push the red button!
This is the story of a child who transformed a family that transformed a generation, and how fame transformed Michael Jackson. This is the Thriller Effect.
Family groups sell millions of records. There are only 5 of them, and there's 6 of us Brady kids.
We could call ourselves a Brady 6.
How did the Jackson 5 feel about all of the other groups like the Sylvers, the Osmonds, and so forth?
Like, we were the first ones that started, and it gives them something to pattern after. And it's nice to have a lot of groups such as the Osmond Brothers and the Sylvers and the Brady Bunch and
Partridge
all
Family.
of them, you know. It's a great thing happening right now, which is just wonderful.
Kids who wanted to follow in our footsteps. That's what America was then. Young groups, the Jacksons, the Partridge Family.
When the Jacksons came out, that's when I got serious. The first album, I was looking at it. I remembered how we was on TV when we were younger. We could do this.
Sure, back in the day, Jackson 5 was the biggest and the hottest thing in the country or in the world. And we wanted that same feeling that they had on the girls and the music industry. We were looking for that.
I wanted the Osmonds to be compared with the Jackson 5. One Bad Apple sounded so much like the Jackson 5 that people thought it was the Jackson 5.
One Bad Apple is an absolute Jackson 5 rep.
Do you know why people thought that was the Jackson 5? The name of the writer was George Jackson, so it said One Bad Apple, Jackson.
I mean, the Jacksons had their sound. The Osmonds had their sound. For a while there, we had ours. The only similarity is that we were family.
To us, you were the white version of the Jacksons.
Of the Jacksons.
And then you were Michael.
I think the reason One Bad Apple took off, it was kind of like the white Jackson 5. There was really no design from our point of view. Maybe from the marketing people of MGM Records there was.
The Osmonds were specially targeted to be the white family group and the other side of the Jacksons' black family group. Mike Herb was running MGM when we were signed.
The minute they had that hit, we knew that that would launch them. And even though people would be comparing them to the Jackson 5, we thought that was better than comparing them to a barbershop quartet, which is what they had been on the Andy Williams show.
To this day, people keep saying, now, was that you or the Jacksons?
The Osmonds were signed already, and they was on MGM. But Mike Herb was cool, because MGM was more pop. They never had no R&B groups on MGM. They put us on the shelf for the Osmonds. They didn't want no other competition out there. But we didn't know that when we signed. And we hit with Fool's Paradise, our first record. And we started writing our own songs then. And we went on the road, people automatically, oh, another Jacksons, because we had the big naturals.
Yeah. Are you good friends with the Sylvers?
For about a year now. Leon and I get together and go out sometime. Real nice guy.
Do you know the Osmond Brothers and are you friends with them?
The very first time I met him, we were both about 12 or 13 years old, and I was in Toronto. I think they were performing the day after us at the same place.
We met in Canada. We had a good time together. Came to the hotel and we talked a while.
They came in early to watch our show, and after the show, we all went back to our hotel, and I remember both our dads talking to each other and our moms talking to each other and having a great time. And Marlon was talking to Jay, and Jermaine was talking to Meryl, and Tito was talking to Wayne, and Jackie was talking to Ellen. And Michael and I were over in the corner telling jokes and playing with toys, and that's what we did. You know, we're both 12 or 13 years old.
Here were these two massive teenage kids having hit records, and all we wanted to do was be kids.
And just like that, the industry's new goal was find your own Jackson 5. Motown had found lightning in a bottle. But at the same time, Gordy was leveling up, driving Motown's resources into film.
Well, at the time, Mr. Gordy went into movies. It looked like he forgot about recording.
Berry Gordy decided to put together this project to be my debut as a movie actress.
It did take me away from a lot of things.
Although Gordy was now moving in Hollywood's filmmaker community, the idea for the song Ben did not originate in a Motown boardroom, and it was not written by Motown songwriters. When Michael was rehearsing the song, he was coached by Walter Scharf and Don Black, and he flourished. Working with Don Black and Walter Scharf was the first time Michael would collaborate with non-Motown songwriters. Don Black and Walter Scharf, they were heavyweights in an entirely different division. Film. Don Black was already a legendary lyricist by 1972. He wrote songs like Diamonds Are Forever,
Diamonds are forever,
Born Free,
free as the grass grows,
and To Sir With Love. Walter Scharf was one of the top film composers in Hollywood, composing scores for Funny Girl, Willy Wonka, and The Chocolate Factory, and The Nutty Professor. Not that one, the original one from 1963.
Well, yeah, I wrote the song Ben, which was from a film, and it was about a rat.
Walter Scharf discusses the process of picking Michael for the song in the Billboard Book of #1 hits.
I was working with a man called Walter Scharf. Then he called me one day.
I just finished work on another film, Scharf said. The people at the studio sent me the script to Ben. They needed a song. The terms were so good that I just couldn't pass it up. Scharf asked Don Black if he'd be interested in writing the words to Ben.
And he said, I've been asked to do this film about a rat. They show me a clip from the film, and it's this boy who's very ill. A friendly rat comes in.
They're gonna burn you, Ben, and they're coming for you.
He becomes very friendly with it. He's got a friend, and he gets better. I can certainly write a song about friendship, and I did.
It was Black who suggested that Michael Jackson should sing the theme song for Ben.
And then Michael Jackson came round, Walter played it, and he cried.
He was anxious to do it, Black said. He's quite an animal lover, very sensitive, you know? He enjoys anything that crawls or flies.
Do you have a snake?
Oh yeah, Rosie the Crusher, boa constrictor.
What are you, some kind of a nut?
He's about 32 feet.
Where does Rosie live?
In my room.
He said the best two lines of any song he's ever read. I used to say I and me, now it's us, now it's we.
Michael talked about the recording of Ben in the autobiography Moonwalk. I was already a devoted fan of film and animation by the time the Jackson 5 Saturday morning cartoon show started appearing over network television in 1971. But my first real involvement with films came when I sang the title song for the movie Ben in 1972.
I'm very fond of Ben, that Michael Jackson recorded.
Which was a soundtrack to a movie about rats. I went right in and cut it.
Walter Scharf said Michael Jackson is the most remarkable young boy I've met. He has more stamina and professionalism than performers, 3 times his age. Michael worked very hard on the song and rehearsed it until he got the lyrics and tune precise.
I'm never satisfied. I'll cut a track. I come home and I say, no, that's not right. We got to do it over. This is not right. And you just go back and back and back. And
we got to know Michael very well, and I was living in Los Angeles. He was like one of the family. He became one of the family. He was delightful. He was faultless.
But I did 2 versions of Ben. The one you heard in the movie and the one I did for the record was another version.
Ben meant a lot to me. Nothing really excited me as much as going to the studio to put my voice on film. Later, when the movie came out, I'd go to the theater and wait until the end when the credits would flash, and it would say Ben, sung by Michael Jackson. I was really impressed by that. I loved the song. I loved the story. A lot of people thought the movie was odd, but not me. The song went to #1, and it's still a favorite of mine.
He was 14 at the time. It went to #1 in America,
Then it's finally out. And it's #1 on the charts. You're still screaming about what you should have done. And that's how that came about. You're just satisfied with everything. You're just going to stay at one level and the world will move ahead.
The article goes on. Ben is probably one of the most beautiful tunes ever. Anyone who bought the record has to admit, no one could have sung it better than Michael.
Ben was written for me. They had to finish the movie, and the producer says, well, there's Michael Jackson, and it became his song.
Then Donnie recorded Puppy Love.
Mike Curb walked in. Mike handed me this sheet music of Paul Anka's song Puppy Love, and I recorded Puppy Love live with this big orchestra. And I go in there, and they call it Puppy Love, and this full orchestra. I'm thinking, wow, this is great.
I guess they'll...
With so much emotion.
I did maybe 2 or 3 takes.
Ben, I did it in 1 take.
And it was good just to see that he was capable of having hit records on his own.
Michael talked about music all the time.
I was such a fan of theirs, and I used to go over to their house in Encino and watch them do moves and hang out.
Music was their life.
And he liked talking about songs.
Favourite songs of his?
He loved the songs from Hans Christian Andersen, Inchworm, Measuring the Marigold. And he would play pool with my sons. He liked all Matt Monroe songs. He would sing that around the pool table.
It was such an incredible time.
Our house was just musical. We just loved music. It wasn't business to us. It was part of life. Jackie was Al Green. Al Green was it.
Marvin Gaye.
Mike was Stills and Croft. Some of the harmonies and melodies. Motown stuff.
I like the Temptations, 3 Dog Night, and Staple Singers.
I like Booty Blues. And then I love Joni Mitchell. And America. We all liked America. But because Michael and I roomed together, he would always take authority over what music would be played.
We were recording last night because we have our own studio at home.
Yeah, we have a studio at home, a 24-track. And the thing you just heard, Jermaine did, that was cut at our house. We're getting other groups together. We have offices, and, we call in other groups and audition them and put down some stuff.
We've been out since August 4th on tour. We're anxiously awaiting to get back home. Get to our studio. We built a 24-track recording studio in our basement. So we're going to be putting in some more licks, writing and producing and recording our next album.
I started their fan club in the summer of 1972. I started a Jackson 5 page in Record Mirror. There were love letters written on underwear. There were girls put together photo books with their names and poems, all kinds of great fan stuff.
Suddenly, every time you printed anything about the Osmonds, and particularly about Donnie, but it was also the whole family, the circulation just immediately shot up. And we went from 500,000 to 1 million in over 8 months. The effect that it had on the magazine was extraordinary.
Editors said to us, we love the Jackson 5, but we can't put them on the cover. They were definitely treated differently. And I think that it had a huge effect on Michael Jackson, but it was definitely there.
The reason I didn't record Ben, I was on the road touring with my brothers.
By the time Ben came out, we knew we were going to have to go around the world. Soul music had become really popular in other countries. We were invited to become a part of that world.
I've been a big fan of the Osmonds since I was a kid.
Did you watch the Jackson cartoons as well?
Well, I watched those first.
And we didn't have a lot of black images back then. To see a black family in a cartoon.
I used to watch them every Saturday morning.
There was the Osmonds around the same time. I used to always have a lot of arguments with people about, they used to say Donny Osmond's better, Donny Osmond's better, Donny Osmond's better.
The so-called rivalry between the Osmonds and the Jackson 5 is part of their British story.
The rivalry was never official, but make no mistake, it was real. And for the first time, the Jacksons shared the international spotlight with the Osmonds. Even the UK media began comparing the two, feeding the fire of fandoms across continents. The UK leg of their 1972 tour was nothing short of hysteria. And in 72, we went on our first overseas tour. We had 3 years of hits behind us. So there was enough music to please our fans and the Queen. We'd be playing at a Royal Command performance.
You got a concert tour that started last night, as a matter of fact. I'm going to talk to you about it in a little while.
Well, first we finished this U.S. tour, and then we go home for about a month, and we start the tour over there. I think in London, England, and I'm very looking forward to it because everybody's been waiting for us for a long time.
I just want to see what it's like.
The Jackson 5 were about to embark on their first tour of Europe. The Osmonds were doing the same thing, and these two groups landed like a bomb.
First time to London, we were going there to do a performance for the Queen.
Well, I'll start from the front. We were on our way to London on the airplane, and the captain told us that there were thousands of fans in the terminal building. He got the notice from the terminal in London.
On the plane over to London, I was informed that we're going to have some problems. There's going to be a lot of people there. I had no idea what they meant by a lot of people. And the whole plane was like buzzing about this. What's going on? What's going on?
I think it's 5 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 in the morning. The pilot about to land.
And the captain came over to my father's before we came in and said there's a lot of people at the airport.
They said we have 10,000 screaming fans at the airport waiting for you guys in sleeping bag.
They slept overnight and camping in little bags.
They landed and they was everywhere.
We got mobbed. I had this jury pull that off my chest and my chest was bleeding.
They grabbed me and they ripped my shirt off. And one girl, she had her pen in her hand. She wrapped her arms around me and the pen went right there. I almost lost my eye from that.
The fans don't realize you can really seriously get hurt.
It was hard to get through the airport.
Yeah, it was extremely hard to get through the airport. We all got trapped. And then they tried to turn the car over and shaking it, pushing it. It was a scary moment. It was crazy.
It was just from excitement of hearing. It's our first time over in London, and it was just great.
Like in London, the fans, they're exciting. So we went to the hotel and they were there all night singing Happy Birthday to Randy, and they would sing to us and sing our songs.
Everywhere we went on the tour, London, Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow, they were mobbed. The fans were just hysterical.
Remember that feeling, you know, the real, you know, that really do exist. When the Jackson 5 stepped out on stage, there was sort of mass hysteria, and, you know, everybody's sort of shouting for the one who they like best, so you could hear, Jermaine Marlon, I'm here.
Although the next day at school, you'd go in and you'd talk about it. Wasn't it wonderful? And they did that song, and that was so lovely. But they were talking to me.
My heartthrob then was Michael. There was definite rivalry between the different camps.
Donnie was a sort of boy that little girls could take home to mum, and you could sit and look at his cute little face over the tea table, and you'd know that he wouldn't try and push you too far.
The goody-goody two-shoes were the Osmond fans, and the cool girls were the Jackson 5 fans. No, I was a cool girl.
We had Michael and we had the Jackson 5.
What was it about Donnie? He was the cutest. I mean, no beating around the bush.
I particularly remember going to the two shows in 1972, which were back-to-back at Wembley. So I remember taking two girls to the show, one to the first show and one to the second. Copious amounts of Afro sheen sprayed all over my hair.
And Michael, girls just loved him.
He was like every girl's dream. I don't know of any of the black girls and even white girls I grew up with that didn't have some fascination for Michael Jackson.
It was a chance for the black community to have somebody to scream and shout at. You know, you had Donny Osmond, you had Cassidy's, and then all of a sudden you had Jackson 5.
And Germany was great, France was great, Holland, Belgium, but the UK stands out greater than any of those places.
Fans packed the streets. Police escorts were mandatory.
These two singers, one from Ogden, Utah, the other from Gary, Indiana, were the hottest teen idols on the chart. And fate found them both touring Britain with their brothers, both staying at the same hotel in London, the Churchill.
Then we got to the hotel. They all came to the hotel and screaming our names outside. We want the Jacksons, and singing our songs and stuff.
Well, the hotel was mobbed by starstruck young girls hoping for a chance to see or touch Michael Jackson or Donny Osmond.
Everybody found out where we were, and I saw this sea of people.
Michael Jackson and Donny Osmond were trapped. Donny says we couldn't go out. There was just no way. There were girls all over the hotel trying to break in and everything. So we got together and played a football game in the hallway. It's the battle of the century.
The boys would play football in the hallways. Janet and I would be the cheerleaders. And, you know, it's like Michael, you know, the Jacksons and my brothers, they were supposed to be like arch enemies, but we weren't. We were like really good friends.
You know, you have fun on tour. It's like everybody becomes one family. It's a lot of jokes, a lot of laughing. You make it fun. Then towards the end, everybody knows because they're going home. But
England was just our jumping off point, and it was different from any place we'd been before. But the farther we traveled, the more exotic the world looked. We went to Paris, Switzerland. But while the Jackson 5 conquered the world, something happened back in America that they didn't see coming, and they wouldn't know about until 3 years later. Unbeknownst to the Jacksons, Berry Gordy filed the trademark to officially own the name the Jackson 5. This move would have lasting implications because only 3 years later, the Jacksons would attempt to leave Motown, and when they did, they couldn't take their name with them. This meant that no matter where the group went, Motown owned the brand. They became the Jacksons, but that name, the Jackson 5, stayed locked in the Motown vault. 1972 was the height of the entire teeny bopper bubblegum bubble. Even the old man, the 23-year-old David Cassidy, was getting a bit tired of the hype machine.
Really like a preteen kind of an audience, like those magazines and things. You know, you don't see anybody that's 23. Most of the kids in there are 14 and 15 because it's easy for them to identify with. My appeal, I mean, is almost a freak at this point.
I think all of them, Michael, the Jackson 5, the Osmond Brothers, they all wanted to be taken seriously as thinkers, writers, as musicians. First out of the gate was the Osmond Brothers with a song called Crazy Horses that they wrote themselves. The Sylvers were also writing their own songs. And because Jackie was friends with Alan Osmond and Leon Sylvers, he was taking note.
Well, we plan to cover all the fields as far as writing, producing
records.
Everything there is in the entertainment business, we plan to cover all of it.
We're gonna start really getting into different things. Going into movies.
Acting, you know. Raymond St. Jock wrote a script for us last week. Sounds pretty good. Well, we get scripts every week to do different types of movies, but they just haven't come up with the right one yet.
First came the Osmonds, Mormon, white, meticulously polished. Then came the Sylvers, funkier, edgier, but still chasing that J5 magic. Produced by the producers who gave the Jackson 5 their first 4 number ones. Even a scripted family like the Partridge Family and the Brady Bunch. They all began pushing records. Some were authentic artists, some were music industry mirages, but all were born from one moment, the Jackson 5 explosion. And for a while, it felt like everyone wanted to ride their coattails. Some were great, some flopped, but none of them were the Jackson 5. The Jackson 5 redefined everything. The Jackson 5 were the blueprint. Time has passed, but the blueprint remains. Which of these groups deserve the most credit? The Sylvers, Osmonds? Who were the clones? Finger 5, the Ponderosa Twins, Jimmy Briscoe and the Little Beavers. You know what to do. Settle it in the comments. Guys, in the next episode, Michael meets Quincy Jones. It's not the meeting that you think it is. It's not the Wiz meeting, but Quincy had a plan for Michael way back in 72. Really interesting stuff. I want to thank you guys, patrons, my 2 YouTube members. Thank you all for supporting this project. Also, had anybody here ever heard of Finger 5 before, or Jimmy Briscoe and the Beavers? I really enjoy you guys' feedback. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope I can get this next episode out really quickly. Maybe tomorrow.